morning everybody, happy Tuesday. We are here for your English lesson this morning and the date today is Tuesday the 9th of February 2021. Our learning objective for English this morning is to understand the language used in a poem. Now language is just a fancy word for words. So we're going to be reading some poems and trying to understand what the words mean. We're going to start off with our handwriting. We're going to practice our letter formations using the handwriting strips at the top of your sheet. Now don't worry if you've not got that sheet at home, you can still practice your handwriting by writing really neatly on a line, on a plain piece of paper or a lined piece of paper. As long as you've got a line that you can write on, you can still do your handwriting. Now, some things to remember when we do our handwriting. Our tummies need to touch the table and our backs need to touch the back of our chair so that we're sitting up nice and straight. You might want to remember your handwriting rhymes and letter families. So our word today is the word the. There it is on our screen. And the letter rhymes are written down here. They're to help you with writing the letters for the word the today. Now you can see for the letter T, we've got to go down the tower and across the tower to make the letter T. For the letter H, we've got to go down the head to his hooves and over his back. And for the letter F, we've got to lift off the top and scoop out the egg. Now your handwriting can be much better than mine because you're going to be writing on your line and you're going to try and get your letters to look exactly like mine do on the screen. So make sure that they're touching the bottom line, they're touching the bottom grey line, and your letter H and your letter T are ascenders. That means they're going up, so make sure they go up towards the top red line. Okay everybody, so today we are going to carry on learning about our poems and different poetry that we can write in year 1. Before we do that though, let's have a little think about what we learned last week when we started reading Ready Steady Mo. We had lots of fun reading this poem, didn't we? We learned 3 things last week about poems. We learned that they are written in verses. We learned that there are rhyming couplets in poems, and we learned what rhyming words were. Now we can see an example of a rhyming couplet, some rhyming words and verses from this page in Ready Steady Mo. Our rhyming words are town and down. Now remember, not all rhyming words look the same, they just sound the same. To be a rhyme, they just need to sound the same. They don't need to look the same or be spelt with the same letters. Rhyming couplets are a pair of lines, 2 lines, that have rhyming words at the end. They are coupled together because they sound the same. So our rhyming couplets on this page from Ready Steady Mo are run in the town and run going down. They are couplets. They are 2 lines together that have the same sound at the end of them, town and down. Now today we're moving on to another part of poetry. We're going to learn about a different kind of poem. Now not all poems need to rhyme. This week we will be writing another poem, but it doesn't need to rhyme. It's going to have a really special theme, and I want you to see if you can work out what the theme is going to be. I'm going to read the poem on your screen now to you, and whilst I'm reading it, I'd like you to think about these 2 questions here. What is the poem about, and what title would you give to the poem? Okay, listen really carefully. See if you can work out what the poem is about and think about a title you might give the poem. Roaring in like a lion, bouncing out like a lamb, spring is making magic over all the land. Pushing up the flowers, painting on the leaves, warming up the weather, waking up the trees, bringing back the bluebirds, spreading sunny cheer. Spring is making magic, making winter disappear. What do you think our poem is about? And what title would you give to the poem? Pause the video and have a little think. Let's think first of all about what the poem is about. Now there are some clues which I've pulled out of the poem and written on your screen here for you. So the clues that I pulled out of the poem, which you might have as well, are the word lambs, new flowers are growing, leaves are growing on the trees, the warm weather's here, and winter is disappearing. Now, if I think about all of those clues together, and I think about when I'd see lambs, and when new flowers start to grow, and the fact that winter is disappearing, I start to think about my seasons. And I know that the season after winter, when winter starts to disappear, is the season that we are going into very, very soon. Can anyone think of what that season might be? What season are we about to go into? Well done, we're going into spring, aren't we? And look, it even mentions spring in the poem. So I think this poem is about spring. Now then, the other question I asked you was what title you would give to the poem. I've come up with 3 titles, but you might have come up with some different ones, some better ones than me. My titles that I came up with was Springtime, Spring is Back, or Spring is Making Magic. And the reason why I thought of these titles was because if I think my poem's about spring, then I think the title might have the word spring in it too. Should we find out what the title was? Our title is Springtime Magic. And just like we said, spring is in the title. All the things in the poem are describing springtime. They're building up an image in our brains of springtime. Now then, I'd like you to pause the video and have a little think about what pops into your mind when you think about spring. There are some pictures on the screen that might help you with this question, but I'd like you to pause the video now and have a little think. What pops into your mind when you think of the season of spring? Brilliant, guys, well done. So there's lots of different things that we think of when we think of spring. The things that I thought of are on your screen at the minute. I thought of some fresh flowers, of new baby animals like lambs and ducks and baby bunnies. I thought of the weather. I thought it's quite rainy in springtime. It can also be very sunny, but it's lots of fun getting out in our wellies and splashing in the puddles. And I also thought about the things that we celebrate in springtime. So some of us might celebrate Easter, and we have little Easter eggs and that are brought to us by the Easter Bunny or by our friends and families. So there's lots of things that we think of when we start to think about spring. So now we're going to go back to our springtime magic poem. And I'd like you to read the poem again and think about which 3 lines you think are the best. Which 3 lines do you think stand out the most and make us think and create an image in our brains of springtime? Read the poem again with your grown-up and then choose your 3 best lines. Now there are no right or wrong answers with that task. You could have picked any words at all, any lines at all from the poem because they're what you think are the best. They are the lines that you think stand out the most and show everybody what spring is all about. Now the words we use in poems are so important, and that's because they help to create a picture in our imagination. The words creating a picture is a special technique that poets like to use in their poetry, and it's called imagery. Can you say imagery? Imagery. Imagery is just a fancy word for the pictures that are created in our minds. And usually, imagery is created by playing on our senses. So we've got our senses written on our screen here. We've got see, hear, smell, feel, and touch. Now I'm going to read our poem again and I'm going to see which lines link to our senses. So we're going to read the first line, roaring in like a lion. Now lions, don't really think of lions in the springtime, but the sound roaring might be how loud the rain is or the thunderstorms. And roaring is what a lion makes, isn't it? So that's why the lion's there. So I think this first line is playing on our sense of sound, of what we can hear. So I'm going to get my green pen and I'm going to underline this first bit in green. I think that line is playing on our sense of sound. Bouncing out like a lamb. Now in the spring we can see lambs, can't we? We've just seen a picture of one of them. So I think this line is playing on my sense of sight, of things that I can see. Spring is making magic over all the land. Now we go up to the next one. We've got pushing up the flowers. Flowers, again, they're things that I can see. They're also things that I might be able to smell. So I'm going to underline that with a blue and a red. Painting on the leaves. That means the leaves are growing back. So again, this is something I can see in the springtime. Warming up the weather. Now let's have a little think. When it's really sunny and warm outside, we might be able to feel it on our bodies. We might be able to feel that it's getting warmer. So I'm going to underline that in yellow, because in yellow is what I'm highlighting for my sense of feel. Okay, waking up the trees, bringing back the bluebirds. Now birds, again, they're things that I can see. So I'm going to underline them in red. But I can also hear the birds, can't I? So I need to get my green and underline it in green, because I can hear the bluebirds just like I could hear the roaring rain. Okay, bringing back the bluebirds, spreading sunny cheer. Spring is making magic, making winter disappear. Again, making winter disappear is something I can see. I can see when the wintry weather is going away and the sunny weather, the springtime weather, is arriving. So you can see on our poem, we use lots of different senses. It's mostly what we can see, but there are little bits about what we can hear, what we can feel, what we might be able to smell, and what we might be able to touch. These senses all help us to create an image in our mind, which is where our imagery comes into play when we write our poems. Now, your job today is pretty similar to what I've just done. You're going to listen to this poem now, which I'm going to read, and it's the poem that you're going to be exploring in your independent activity today. I want you to listen carefully and think about what pops into your mind as you listen. So what images, pictures are created in your mind whilst you listen to this poem? Listen carefully. Spring is here, leaves and buds everywhere. Caterpillars crawl along, the birds sing a cheery song. The smell of grass in the air, children playing without a care. Bees flying from flower to flower, a rainbow appears during the fresh shower. The coldness of winter disappears, the warmth of spring reappears. Goodbye to the dark and hello to the sun. Spring is a time to play and have fun. Okay, everyone, I'm not sure who wrote that poem, but it is a lovely springtime poem. And I'd like you now to have a think what pictures popped into your mind whilst you listened to that poem. Okay, everybody, now it's time for your main task for today. Your job is to draw pictures to match the words in the poem. Then you're going to decide what sense those lines play on. So let me show you first of all. Let's look at this first box. Our first words in the poem are spring is here, leaves and buds everywhere. Okay, now my pictures that I've drawn are of leaves on the branches but getting ready to grow, and little buds, little shoots of flowers growing in the ground. So there's my shoots and there's my leaves. And I've said that I can see these things happening. That's one of the senses that this poem plays on. I can see what is happening. I might also be able to smell these fresh flowers that are growing under the growing from the ground up. Now, your job is to draw pictures for the next few boxes that are on your sheet. You can see that there's one here already. Here it is. It says caterpillars crawl along, the birds sing a cheery song. So you might want to draw a picture of the caterpillars crawling on the ground and of the birds singing their song. Now let's have a think. Which sense does this play on? Can we see the caterpillars and see the birds? We can, can't we? So we can draw a circle around C. Can we smell the caterpillars and the birds? Maybe not. Could we touch the caterpillars that are crawling along? I mean, we could, but this doesn't tell us that we're touching anything in the poem, does it? And we couldn't touch the birds because they're so high in the trees. Could we hear the caterpillars? Maybe not. Could we hear the birds' cheery song? We could, couldn't we? So we can circle the word here. Could we taste the caterpillars and the birds? No. So there's your first two boxes completed. Now your job is to do the next four on your own. So draw your pictures to match the words and then think about which senses they play on. We can't wait to see all of your beautiful drawings and see all of the things that you imagine whilst reading the lines of this poem. Remember, if you are struggling with this task, please let your adult know and we will be able to help you in any way that we can. Well done, Year 1, you are doing a fantastic job.